Hello, beautiful friends and book lovers. I hope that you're all doing well. If you're new here, my name is Heather, and I love to mainly chat about mysteries and thrillers, but I will just review basically anything that I have been reading. And today's review is for one of my top books of 2024, which is Alice Feeney's Beautiful Ugly. So this is going to be a non-spoiler book review and then also a read with me portion of it. So I know this book just came out in January. I got it early through Book of the Month. Sometimes Book of the Month does these deals where you can get books early, which is really sweet. So I had already pre-ordered it through Tertulia, which I will link down below. That is where I buy my physical copies of books if it's not through Book of the Month. But anyways, since they had the deal going, I got 2 copies, one through Tertulia and then one through Book of the Month. But I just couldn't wait. Like when I knew I had the chance to read it early, I was like, I have to do it because it was my most anticipated read of 2024. But yeah, so the first portion of this video is just going to be my non-spoiler book review, and then I will put a timestamp in the description box below for when the read with me starts. I broke the book up into 3 parts, and then I tell you my parts as I'm reading, or I tell you my thoughts for those parts as I'm reading. So I will break those up as well if you wanted to read it with me, or if you just simply wanted to hear my thoughts and predictions as I read the book. So Alice Feeney is my favorite thriller author. I love her book so much. There has only been one book of hers that I didn't love, which was Good Bad Girl, but I highly recommend all of her other books. Like, they're just really good psychological thrillers, especially Daisy Darker, Rock, Paper, Scissors, and His and Hers. I have dedicated reviews for both Rock, Paper, Scissors and Daisy Darker. And the Daisy Darker one, I think, is a read with me. They both might be read with me videos. I'm not sure. But anyways, I ended up loving this book. On my rating scale, it is a for sure go get this book now. Order it. I know it just came out. If you haven't pre-ordered it, like, jump on it, go get it. It's the perfect cozy weekend thriller. I feel like you guys are gonna fly through it. But I did want to tell you what I loved about it. So something that I love in my thrillers is a secluded setting. So we're following our main character named Grady, who in the first 2 pages of the book, his wife goes missing. He's on the phone with her and she's like, oh my gosh, I see this woman in the street. Let me go investigate. Doesn't see her ever again. And he is an author, and his publisher, maybe, I don't know, somebody he works with, I'm just gonna go ahead and say publisher, was like, hey, you've lost your writing mojo since your wife has gone missing. I have this connection where you can go to this secluded island, and maybe when you're there, you'll get your inspiration back for writing. So that's basically the setup of our book. Our main character goes to this island. He's hoping to get his, writing mojo back while he's there. And while he's there, all of this crazy stuff starts happening. I think it's a really fun book to make predictions with. Some of my predictions ended up being right, and others were jaw-dropping for me, like, actually. And there's a really fun Easter egg in the book, which is just, I don't know. I loved it. I thought it was great. Usually I never read anybody else's reviews until I read the book because I don't want to get swayed, especially when it comes to an Alice Feeney book. Like, I try to get them right as they come out so I can read it to see, my thoughts before seeing what other people have thought about it. And I haven't really read many other reviews on it since I read it. So I don't know if everybody else is loving it just as much as me. But yeah, I'm really excited to get into the read with me portion of the video to chat with you guys because I had so many predictions. But yeah, all in all, I thought it was really well written. I think that the main character is mysterious, so it's hard to kind of maybe like see his intentions throughout the story. Like, I felt he was mysterious. The things that were happening were just really crazy. It's kind of spooky. Like, there are some scenes where you're just like, oh my gosh. I loved it. I loved the secluded setting. It was just so much fun. Yeah, and as you can tell, I had an absolute blast reading it. So I highly recommend it. I don't think you guys would be disappointed. I think it's a fun book to predict. But yeah, the rest of the oh my gosh, the rest of this video is going to be my thoughts on breaking up the book. The first part is on pages 0 through 100. Second part, 101 through 200. And then third part is 200 through finish. So if you want to read it together, I will leave timestamps, or if you just want to hear my thoughts and predictions, then go ahead and keep watching. If you're new here, I would love if you could hit that subscribe button and that post notification bell so you're notified every time I post a new bookish related video. Okay, so these are my thoughts on pages 0 through 100. So obviously everything going forward is going to contain spoilers. And I'm going to be looking at my notes a lot. You guys already know the drill. I thought it was so weird that Grady's wife, just in the beginning first pages, like she's saying I love you to him and stuff on the phone. And then he says he can't remember the last time that they've said I love you to each other. And I'm like, that seems so odd to me. And then I'm like thinking, was her disappearance planned? Like, did she plan on disappearing? Like, who doesn't say I love you to the person that they're married with? Like, something's off there. Okay, the next thought I had was in regards to the ferry scene when he's first getting on the island. I wrote, maybe the driver that was on the ferry, whose silhouette he saw, he couldn't make it out if it was a man or a woman, or at least it didn't specify from what I remember in the book. But I said, maybe that really was his wife, and maybe she got back in the car after he thought that like she was just an illusion. Like maybe it actually really was her. But then like the dog barking makes me think that maybe he actually did see her too, and he wasn't like going crazy. Because that almost makes me think like that the dog had recognized her. And then he said like as the car was driving by, they were looking at him like really slowly, but he couldn't see into the car. And I'm like, maybe it's his wife and she's trying to like tweak him out or something. Thinking of Grady in that secluded cabin literally just made me so anxious for him. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine just like this cabin in the middle of the woods. And then he finds that creepy hand under the floorboards. Like, whose hand is that? Then I'm starting to think, like, does he just have a lack of sleep? Like, is he crazy? Like with the whole telephone booth thing, he thinks he hears it ringing. Then he thinks he hears people in the restaurant. And then when he looks, nobody's there. And then I wrote, lack of sleep does crazy things to people. But did he really make up the entire conversation that he thought he had? Like, I don't know. I'm torn between like, are people playing with him, or is it his lack of sleep and like, is he going crazy? Okay, I'm back. I had to pause filming that day, so I'm picking up on a new day. Also, can I just say this is like mid-video, but my hair is finally long enough to do heatless curls. So this is what it looks like. It is currently a little past 3 and they look pretty good. I don't do anything to my hair at all. I literally I shower the night before, I air dry it, and then I sleep with I do like a velvet band. I don't do those like rod ones. I tried it. I couldn't figure it out to save my life, but this is nice. They just fall like during the day. I brush them out in the morning. For a while, I was just using like a big toothed comb, but I felt like it just wasn't brushing it out like well enough. So I just brush it out with my brush, and then I kind of do what I was just doing with my fingers, and they hold. It's just like a nice loose curl throughout the day. So I've been loving that. I'll link that down below. I will say though, I typically have much shorter hair than what I'm rocking right now. This is very, very long for me. So it's finally long enough to be like able to use it. So before it wasn't. So that's just the only caveat. But okay, back to the story. So we're still on thoughts through pages 100. And I'm going to be looking at my notes a lot. You guys know the drill. But basically, a random woman, I wrote, shows up on the ferry, but only Sandy like sees her get off. And then they just never see her again, right? And then that random guy's body washes up, but we're not sure like who it is. Who does the hand belong to? Then we're thinking it might be the hand of like the author, right? At this point in the book, I'm just honestly like so confused. And then when he was at Sandy and Midge's house, he hears that like banging, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is that his wife? My dog's here. I'm like, is that his wife, like, trying to escape, or like not like escape, but like notify him, like, I'm here, I'm in the attic, like, help me, like, I don't know. But right now the vibes are crazy and spooky, and I am invested. I am loving this setting. But yeah, now I'm gonna jump in on my thoughts on pages 100 through 200. So now there's that article about his wife, or not about his wife, that his wife wrote about, like, there being like a rapist and stuff. And I'm like, is Grady like the rapist that's mentioned in this article from the past? And now it's like being kind of taunted in his face, like, hey, we know who you are, like, we know what you've done. Like, did his wife find that out, like, after she had married him, maybe? Like, was he not truthful about his past? Then it's that scene where it's the dead of night and he hears like a harmonica or something playing his presumed dead wife's like favorite song. Picture that happening in a remote cabin in the woods and you hear that song. Like, somebody is for sure messing with him, right? At this point, I'm like, this would make such a good movie, because now he thinks he sees his wife again in the red coat. Like, is he actually seeing her? Is she messing with him? Is kind of like what I'm thinking. And then also, I'm forgetting, I didn't write down the character's name, but she tells him, it's like that woman who's like working at the church or whatever. She tells him that they're like practicing the death bell. Like, are they practicing because they're getting ready to kill someone? And is this someone him? Still super confused in the book. I have so many questions, like, is this an insane asylum on the island? Is this a ghost island? You know, like, I don't know what route Alice Feeney is going, but I just know that, honestly, I don't know what's going on in the book. All I know is I know that I don't know what is going on in the book. Does that even make sense? Like, I just have all of these questions. Okay, on page 124, I had this thought. Okay, I'm going to read you word for word what I wrote, because this is the biggest theory I have right now. It says, on page 124, the thought occurred to me, like, has he ever met any men on this island? Like, so far, every single person he's met has been a woman, okay? And I wrote that I know there's only 25 members, apparently, but it just strikes me as odd. And then there's that part where we meet Mary, and she's married to a butcher named Alex, but then Alex turns out to be a female, right? So, like, now I'm wondering, like, is this an island of, like, wronged women? Like, have all of these women kind of gotten together and, like, almost formed this, like, I hate to use the word cult, but, like, man-hating cult almost kind of thing? Like, what the heck is going on? And now, remember when I said, like, is Grady that rapist from that article that was mentioned? Like, maybe all the women come to this island to, like, bond, and now that they know, like, the terrible things that Grady has done, maybe he's, like, on their shit list kind of thing. Are they toying with him, like, psychologically to kind of, like, you know, mess with him on purpose because they're trying to, like, make him break or something? Did his wife find out his true identity? Like, I don't know. But all I know is that he has not seen any women on this island. Okay, the next thought I wrote down is Abby obviously was molested when she was younger, right? She went through some terrible trauma with that, like, piano instructor. And then maybe, like, she's also been wronged by Grady in their marriage somehow. Maybe he did something really bad, and now she's, like, orchestrating this whole thing. And maybe it's to, like, even the point of she convinced his agent to, like, send him here. Like, maybe they're in cahoots. Then I wrote down on page 149 that Sandy totally had the shed key on her person and pretended like she found it, was my guess. And then on page 155, I wrote down a quote that men have been causing problems on this island since the beginning of time, which is just yet another clue that adds to my theory of it being, like, a man-hating island, or, like, you know, they're wanting to get revenge of some sorts. And then, sorry, now I'm just, like, I'm just reading directly from my notes. When he hears his wife calling for him, oh, that's right, that scene in the forest. I think it's because somebody, like, hit a walkie-talkie there in the island, because they're all, like, using these walkie-talkies, and maybe, like, she's messing with him and he can hear the walkie. But then Columbo, I think, hears her and runs to her because he recognizes her. And then just another quote on page 161, somebody had said women have had enough. Like, you know, the system has failed them. He's starting to recognize that they all have this like little thistle symbol. And somebody says we're all a part of a cult, like as a joke. But I'm like, are you now? Like, are you? So then he finds out that tea that he's been drinking is supposed to make you like hallucinate or whatever. Like, no wonder now that's adding to all of his like chaos that he's been experiencing. And then we find out that Sandy's daughter died like 40 years ago or something. She is saying due to the ignorance of like a male substitute teacher. And I'm like, okay, even further fuel for this fire theory that I've got going on, that somebody has, you know, a vendetta against a male in their life. Then there's that weird scene where he thinks he's talking to Abby, but her eyes are brown. And then I'm like, could she just have been wearing colored contacts? Like, that's very plausible, right? But then she says something weird to him, like about the dog. She says something like, she either says the dog's name or did I write it down? No, I didn't. But I wrote down, like, does she have a twin or something? I don't know. Is she wearing colored contacts? Is she the mastermind behind all of this? And then we're going to find out now in parts 3, 201, page 201 to finish. Okay, so on page 202, Abby says, why don't you leave Columbo in the car? And I'm like, did he ever say what the dog's name was? I guess this is the first time he's seeing her on the island. So it's not like she can use the excuse of like, oh, I've like seen you on the island with him and heard you calling his name. Like, no, she just said that. Like, in my book, she just let herself slip up. You know what I mean? Then I'm thinking like maybe she has some sort of like split personality thing where like she truthfully doesn't remember him. Or it's the original theory of like she's just orchestrating this whole thing. All right, I'm just gonna read all these thoughts because it's a lot. I'm so confused. Was she leading a double life? Was she married to Grady and also someone else? Weren't there parts mentioned that Abby was gone for work? Maybe she was on Amberley with her first husband and like living with her first husband. Was her first husband Charles, the author? And then I said there was a part a while back where Grady was mistaken for him by the #1 fan or whatever at his book signing. And he made a comment like, oh, do you think I look like him too? And then it said like her face blanched or whatever when he made that comment, like almost like she had known Charles. I wrote on page 227, it's just like that scene where he thinks he's dreaming, but then he like thinks that he's woken up and like he sees this like creature with like arms or whatever coming out from under the bed. But he's drinking so much and he's got this lack of sleep. And I'm like, this guy has so much going on. But like that entire scene was just so creepy. Like I feel like I could really imagine it. And I'm like, ugh, imagine that happening to you. Then I wrote down, did somebody sneak inside his cabin at night and swap out the pamphlet so he felt like he was crazy, you know, when he took that pamphlet from Abby's pottery or whatever? He was convinced that it was like her picture or whatever on the pamphlet. Then we're learning about this Travers character, which totally sounds like a guy's name, but it ends up being yet another woman. I'm like, okay, this is confirming my theory. Now it's just a massive like paranoia. Like everything in the book is like, is he paranoid? Is this actually happening? Did somebody siphon out his gas from his car because he was convinced he had gas in it when he was talking to Cora? Like, are they all talking about him on the walkie-talkies, or has this just reached a level of paranoia? Like, that's what I love so much about Alice Feeney's books is like, we just don't know. Like, she's created this character who's an unreliable narrator. He's a drunk. He's, you know, doesn't have any sleep ever. Like, you know, we all know what lack of sleep can do to people, right? Then we find out she was wearing contact lenses. Like, my theory of like, it is really her. She's just messing around with him. On page 268, I wrote her story of the sub being drunk and coming to her house and then like it alluded to like molesting her is different than the story that was at the beginning of the book where it was like a piano teacher. So I wrote like, I'm so confused. What's going on? Right? Then jaw dropping, we find out it was Grady in the road and he tried to kill her. And I'm just like, why? Like, why would he do that? Like, I know the answers are coming, but like, I did not see that coming. That was such a jaw dropping moment for me. Like that first scene of the book, like I never once thought like, could it be him standing in like the middle of the road? I also did not see it coming that it was two different Abby point of views. One of them being his publicist and then, or Kitty, I think was her name, while she was like married to Charles. I did not see that coming at all. Then it explains why the like piano teacher and like sub or whatever point of views were like those stories were altered because they were two different people's stories, you know? I thought that was crazy. I truthfully did not see that coming at all. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot this part of the book. I wrote, Grady tried to kill Abby because he thought she was having an affair when he found that pregnancy test. But in reality, she was doing IVF with a donor because she wanted to have a baby. And she just didn't tell him right away because he was getting like the big news about his book. Crazy that he was going to try to kill her. And then just one of my last thoughts was I thought it was so fun with the little Easter egg that was hinted about in his book. But then I went back in this book and looked at the first 14 words of the chapter. And it does end up being an Easter egg. So if you haven't done that yet, it is not just Grady's book that has that. It's actually in this book too, which I thought was so much fun. But yeah, that wraps up my thoughts on the read with me and everything I thought about for the first, trying to break up the book in 3 sections. You guys watched the non-spoiler, but if you didn't, I loved it. I love her books. I just think they really grip you. And once I start reading it, I just finish oh my gosh, words. I feel like I can't stop. Like I just have to finish it, because I'm so hooked and I just always want to know what's happening. And I feel like I have to find out right then and there. But yeah, anyways, let me know what you thought about the book. If your comment contains spoilers, please indicate that at the top so we don't ruin anything for anybody else. But yes, as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next read with me. Bye.